My name is Jesse, and welcome to the New Scotland Spirits Tasting Room. We're located at the corner of State and Lark in Albany, New York, the capital of the world. And what we sell and pour here are our New Scotland Spirits. New Scotland Spirits are distilled from grain grown in my hometown of New Scotland, little beautiful jewel of a corner in Albany County. And all of these spirits are distilled from grains that were grown on the very fields on which I grew up. Now, if you're in New York, you might be familiar with some of the wine from the Finger Lakes or some of the amazing breweries. But what you might not know, because you haven't explored it, is that New York's tradition when it comes to distilled spirits is second to none, no matter what they'll tell you in Kentucky. So first on the docket, I'd like to introduce to you my 100% wheat whiskey. Now, this is wax sealed the way your grandfather intended whiskey to be sealed. And that's why you're gonna need a knife. We happen to have these customized blades, and let me depict it differently. It's not a knife. You gotta be careful about that because they wouldn't allow us to have knives at the farmers markets. What I meant to say is that this is a bottle opener because you're gonna need a blade to open our wax-sealed New Scotland Spirits. This Helderberg whiskey, right, the brand Helderberg, that recalls the mountain range on the eastern edge of the town of New Scotland. So what you're gonna do is take your knife and start running it around the edge, like you've been here before. And eventually you're gonna find that your spirit is ready to sample. This is a Helderberg winter wheat whiskey. It is 100% wheat whiskey, right? Single grain. And the cool thing about a winter wheat whiskey is that it's distilled from winter wheat, which, notwithstanding the artistry on the bottle, which depicts snowy fields and kind of images of the frozen tundra that New York becomes during the winter months, in fact, you actually harvest your winter wheat in the spring. It's underneath those blankets of snow during the winter. And when you finally are able to harvest it and then distill that wheat into this golden amber colored hue, you're left with an incredibly sweet, incredibly smooth Helderberg winter wheat whiskey. I don't mind if I do. .82 proof, aged 7 years. I mean, that's an interesting thing to consider, that if you took 3 age cycles ago at 7 years, that's before the freaking iPhone. A lot has happened since the time I took that spirit from the barrel and put it in that bottle. I'm a different person. In fact, I'm far older than I would otherwise like to be, because the 35-year-old who could drink this Helderberg winter wheat whiskey could dome the bottle if he needed to. Nowadays, we sip it a little more maturely, and at least that allows us to actually indulge in the flavors. So, for example, let's talk about what it is you're going to experience in this silky, smooth, sweet spirit. Well, the first thing you're tasting is not actually the wheat. God, I can do this all day long. What you're actually tasting is the caramelized starches from when you toast or char a white oak barrel. That's what gives this whiskey the color. The difference between a clear spirit and a whiskey, that brown color, that all comes from the barrel. So let me power up for a second. That's right. I'm tasting the sugars from having charred that oak, caramelizing the starches into something that over the course of 7 years imbues that spirit with this delicious, almost to me, toffee or caramel flavor. What I'm actually tasting is the chemical compound vanillin, which it's probably not the biggest conceptual leap to reveal to you is most notably present in vanilla. That's the chemical compound you're tasting. And in this New Scotland Spirits branded Glencairn glass, we have that 7-year aged spirit that is a testament to what people can do in a community when they come together. From the cooper who makes the barrel, to the farmer who grows the grain, to the attorney who understands how to use contracts to bind everyone together in the service of this shared collaborative outlet. Now, before we move on to the next spirit, I want to tell you a little bit about New Scotland Spirits and the mission that animates this company. It started while I was still in the Army. Back in 2016, it became clear that the town of New Scotland was under assault by the development pressures that lots of different rural towns face. And, you know, for me, losing those agrarian traditions would be devastating. The small town community in which I grew up, that's what has given me a sense of purpose. And the forests and fields of New Scotland were under assault. That's when I worked with some of the area farms and I said, look, give us an opportunity to show that we can weaponize capitalism for our own benefit. That we can, in fact, use the forces of the market to take grain and give these fields a new purpose as the source for what we're going to put in these bottles. So we started sourcing these grains. And so what I now taste when I uncork a bottle of our Helderberg rye whiskey is the taste of a community coming together to take those fields and make a genuine farm product out of the grain we've distilled. This is what's known as an Empire Rye whiskey. An Empire Rye whiskey is not just any rye whiskey. It's a rye whiskey that's distilled only in New York State and according to very specific and elevated production criteria you can only find in the Empire State. Most notable among the criteria by which you distill an Empire Rye whiskey is the fact that it's not just 51% minimum rye in the grain bill, which is what's required for a rye whiskey, it's a minimum 75% rye in the grain bill. And in fact, that's what we've adhered to with our Helderberg rye whiskey. The other thing that's notable is that when the whiskey comes off the still, it's barreled at a slightly lower barrel proof. We add a little bit more water to it. And the idea is that it makes the spirit inside those barrels slightly more soluble. The interaction with the white oak, the fibers of the barrel over the course of the incredibly fluctuating seasons of the Northeast, well, as that barrel is expanding and contracting, the spirit is getting pulled into the fibers, pushed back out, and so what you're left with is a rye whiskey that still is going to be spicy like the ryes that you may have grown up with, but it also is going to have a little bit of a back-end sweetness. As I like to say, there's a floral sensibility. It's less honey than honeysuckle. If you knew how this felt going down, you'd probably ban it in most parts of the United States because it's obscenely good. In fact, this Helderberg rye whiskey, this is my pride and joy, okay? I love what we've been able to achieve, and I love the way that this expresses New York's native grain, which is to say rye. On the bottle, you'll see imagery that recalls Thatcher Park, the top of the Helderberg Escarpment, overlooking the city of Albany. The other thing that's notable about this Helderberg rye whiskey is that it is a 85 proof spirit, recalling Route 85, which is more commonly known around these parts as New Scotland Road, until it turns into New Scotland Avenue, until it dumps you onto Madison Ave, where you take your single left, and now you're on Lark Street at the New Scotland Spirits Tasting Room. I mean, that's what's really cool about this whole community. I'm in Albany right now. Right outside the front door of the New Scotland Spirits Tasting Room is Lark Street, also known as 443. I could take this road all the way up to where I grew up in the town of New Scotland, 15 miles away, and merely take a single right, and I'd be in front of my parents' house. So in fact, I like to think that we may be in the city right now, but I'm just a 15-mile drive and a single right-hand turn away from the boonies that have produced these incredible spirits. So, shall we continue on this flight? Yeah, why not? It's 9 in the morning. You gonna judge? Of course not. It's time for the bourbon. And let's get a little self-righteously militant about this for a second. Before I am an American, I'm a New Yorker. Before I'm a New Yorker, I'm an Albanite. And before I'm an Albanite, I am a New Scot. That's in part why I am so infatuated with the community that has produced not just me, but also our spirits. That said, I still have the ability to have some sort of regional animosity towards the distillers in Kentucky who will insist that it isn't a bourbon unless it's distilled in Kentucky. Well, that's either a lie or an unfamiliarity with 27 CFR section 5.143, the standards of identity for a bourbon, which state the following. To be a bourbon, a whiskey must be distilled in the United States from a mash including at least 51% corn and aged in a new charred white oak barrel. Notice that what I did not say was anything relating to Kentucky. This is an authentic bourbon, and I invite all of the Kentuckians to come and fight me if they think that this bourbon is in some way inferior to the products that they are putting all this marketing money into to insist that this is an imposter. It is not. What it is a high rye bourbon, distilled from grain, grown exclusively in New York State. I didn't mean to be that threateningly menacing with my bottle opener. Or did I? We're going to be opening this bourbon. It is a 99 proof bourbon. This 99 proof bourbon, you're not going to notice that it's 99 proof. What you are going to notice is that it's incredibly smooth. That has a lot to do with the aging process. This is a 5-year aged bourbon. Again, aged in the white oak barrels, charred by our friends down at the Adirondack Barrel Cooperage, which craft all of our barrels. And this one is particularly symbolic to me. This is the Hilton Barn, right next to the Bender Melon Preserve. And this is the barn that we saved, literally lifted it up from the place that it had been since the early 19th century and on wheels carted across the road, 85A, to save it from demolition when developers moved into town. There are a few people in my life whom I love more than this label. We're going to try this Helderberg bourbon, 99 proof, aged 5 years. And we're going to take a second to savor it. Bourbon, by act of Congress, like legitimately, I believe in 1964, is America's native spirit. You cannot make a bourbon in any other country but the United States. So take that, Uganda. There's a satisfaction that comes when you take a little sip of this golden liquid, rendered golden again by the barrel. Everything about our spirits come from this state. The grain, the municipal water from Albany that we utilize in creating our spirits, the barrel, which authors so much of the taste of any of our spirits. And then the team that comes together to self-distribute our products through 32 counties statewide, and especially here in the 11 counties of the Capital District. We're a hardy people here in upstate New York. We have to be, because 6 months out of the year, the place is freaking unbearable. But what we lack in pleasant weather during those winter months, we make up for in a whiskey that can completely numb us to the pain. I wish I could take all of the credit for my Helderberg bourbon. And in fact, normally I do, but only because now I'm on camera, and so there will be people who can fact check me. I'm obligated to say that it's not just me who creates this. It is the farmers. It is the coopers. It is the distillers. It is the people who make this company possible. Which is to say, if I need to spoon feed it to you, the customers, the people who like indulging in what we bring forth and share with you. And the engravers who made this nifty little Glencairn branded glass for me. Now we're gonna leave these whiskeys behind for just a second. We'll come back to a whiskey, a very specific type of whiskey. But in the meantime, I wanna show you a product about which I'm particularly self-absorbed. This is my Helderberg vodka. Now I'm gonna admit something to you. When I first put this on the market, I was a little ambivalent about how well it was selling. I mean, after all, I was overseas in the mountains of Afghanistan and the deserts of Iraq while all this was aging. I had selected the barrel, I had selected the grain bill, I had worked with distillers, worked with the coopers, worked with the farmers to come up with an incredible product. Because whiskey is an art. And this is just a science. You throw money at it, you can create the best vodka on the market. And so there was a part of me that was like maybe a little petulant about the fact that my vodka was dominating the sales because I didn't feel like I could really take a lot of credit for it, right? But as it has become an increasingly notorious and popular product, I've actually started appreciating that, in fact, the skill might not be on display with me per se, but still with the team. And the people that distilled this, gentlemen by the name of Bruce and Jordan, they knocked it out of the park. This is a 6 times distilled corn vodka, 100% corn. But the magic comes in the fact that it is thrice chill filtered with Herkimer diamonds, which is to say, the quartz from Herkimer County. That carbon compound pulls all of the impurities out in a way that you wouldn't believe. And in fact, you're gonna have to take my word for it because you're gonna get to watch me sip my Helderberg vodka. You just use your imagination. There's also, before we even open it, there's something you should also be aware of, which is to say that, as we've discussed earlier, you're gonna need the bottle opener to remove the wax seal on the whiskeys. But our retailers were in a state of open revolt when we said that that's how you had to open our vodka, and so we begrudgingly put these little pull tabs. And I'm not going to admit to you how much easier it is to open the bottle. Our Helderberg vodka is what a vodka is supposed to taste like. This filtered spirit, you could do it at home with a bottle of Pop-Off, running it 20 times through your Brita filter. Or you could just leave it to us to provide for you a vodka that is basically its own cocktail. I'm serious. Throw a cube in it and a lemon slice, maybe a lime peel. You've got yourself the best possible spirit with which to enjoy your summer on the beach, by the pool, at the lake. This vodka, you can't smell it because all the impurities have been removed. The reason why the big distillers out there no longer filter their vodka is because they know that you're gonna dump Red Bull in it, or cranberry juice, or olive juice, or orange juice, or tonic, or soda. but you don't need to. Not anymore. I'd call it flavored water. I mean, this thing, run a marathon. This will refresh you. That's not medical advice. That's just commercial puffery, but you get the gist. It's really smooth. Now, I'd encourage you to mix it nonetheless. Throw this in a dirty, filthy, deviant vodka martini, and then enjoy the taste of the olives, because you're not going to get that acetone smell. I've really come around on vodka, right? Like, I used to have to emotionally prepare myself to sniff and then take a shot. Not anymore. There are a couple vodkas out there. I'll admit, we're not the only ones doing this. But there are very few people that take this degree of pride in a vodka. There are very few people that are putting the time and the money into ensuring that your vodka is a ready-made cocktail right out the bottle. But here's where things get really magic. Well, I mean, not here. That was just gratuitously drinking because I like my vodka. Never mind. What I'm about to show you is also a 100% corn spirit, just like the vodka. It is also clear. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a corn whiskey. This is not a vodka. It is the only whiskey category where the spirit is clear. It's called a corn whiskey. Now, savvy viewers will note that bourbons are corn whiskey. I mean, that's what bourbon means. Minimum 51% corn in the grain bill. By law, into the Code of Federal Regulations, a corn whiskey has to be a minimum 80% corn in the mash. And this corn, unlike with the vodka, really shines through, because it's not 6 times distilled, it's once distilled. It's not thrice chill filtered, it's not filtered at all. This is gonna taste like corn on the cob. From a bottle that looks oddly reminiscent, in my recollection, of an IV bag. I obtained the trademark to 68 whiskey while I was in Iraq. 68 whiskey is the military occupational specialty code for the Army Combat Medic. And the Army Combat Medic is why so many of our service members make it home unscathed. It's why they get to come home and why their loved ones can celebrate their rescue from the battlefield. We created the 68 whiskey spirit to honor not just the Army Combat Medic, but all our veterans. So for you soldiers watching, now that you're no longer subject to General Order Number 1, join me in a toast. If you come from the South, where there's a tradition of moonshining, you'll recognize this spirit. The word moonshine simply is a reference to any spirit for which the excise taxes have not been paid. And down south, most of the moonshiners are using the cheapest grain available, which is to say, corn. But this is a corn whiskey. We paid the excise taxes. And it smells like I've just opened a can of sweet white corn. Perhaps because it's distilled from sweet white corn. 100% corn, just like the vodka, but because of the production process, this is a completely different experience. And it's certainly one that is going to take you by surprise if you're not familiar with moonshines or corn whiskeys. In fact, lots of people will say this is much more reminiscent of a tequila. And when you keep that in mind, when that's what you're thinking, and you take a sip, all of a sudden your palate is prepared to receive the splendorous beauty of what's inside. I think it's important that we speak about what distillation is, what it means, what that process entails. It's pretty simple, really. Whereas a wine or a beer creates that alcohol from a fermenting mash, the fermentation creates the alcohol. All distillation means is that you've heated that mash, and because alcohol has a lower boiling point, the alcohol evaporates off first. Goes into the still, it cools, it turns back into a liquid, and that liquid is your distillate. That's your spirit. It's separating out the alcohol, the fermented alcohol, into its most concentrated form. And the flavor molecules from that corn mash that accompany our 68 whiskey, I mean, it's both science and, dare I say, a little bit art to get a flavor like this. Our 68 whiskey spirit, it's not something that we distill for us. What I mean is, this is the whiskey that isn't designed to pad the company's bottom line. What it is designed to do is, in line with my Army service, give back. That's why we partnered with the Hidden Battles Foundation. It's a New Hampshire-based organization that specializes in the treatment of alcoholism in veterans and first responders. 68% of the profits of every bottle sold go to the Hidden Battles Foundation, and we pay them once a year on Veterans Day, following our 6.8-mile Veterans Day Ruck March fundraiser, which supports the food pantries of the Capital District, the Capital Region Veterans Memorial, the Boot Campaign, and of course, the Hidden Battles Foundation. My military service is inseparable from the origins of this company. And in many ways, I'm here because I was a part of that larger family that was deployed overseas in the service of a greater ideal. What I took from that is the imperative of having a greater ideal when you come back stateside. For me, that greater ideal brought me home. Home to the Capital District, home to the County of Albany, home to the town of New Scotland. And so I'm here, trying to bring my New Scottish experience to the people with whom I share this larger corner of the planet. It's an honor to be able to show people what I love so much about my community and the incredible farm products it produces, to wit, the New Scotland spirits. And because you folks are here, I'm going to give you just a peek at some very special products you can only get at the New Scotland Spirits tasting room if you're willing to be subjected to our unconscionable price gouging. This is the very first spirit we ever distilled. It's our flagship. It is our New Scotland Spirits Helderberg single malt whiskey. Now, if this were distilled in Scotland, it'd be a Scotch. It's a 100% malted barley product, aged 5 years. The very first thing that we ever distilled. That's it. That's the last of them. But this is the one that means the most to me. This is the thing that I thought we would rally our company around. And the reason we didn't, of course, is because remember that when you're talking about whiskey, you're talking about spirits. You're talking about the ebb and flow of the gods that control the weather, because it's a farm product. And after experiencing back-to-back barley crop failures, we finally had to accept that maybe single malts weren't going to be where our company's fortunes lay. It's one of the reasons that we then pivoted to rye. This is another Empire Rye. In fact, the brand name is the Helderberg Empire Rye. It is a 100% single grain rye whiskey, aged 6 years. Again, it's all she wrote, folks. The problem with being a small batch distiller is that every product we produce is limited edition. Unless you or an uncle has an extra $1 million lying around, call me. Last but not least, and in fact, you're gonna get to watch me kick this right now. This is the last bottle plus final sip of our Helderberg bonded bourbon. A bonded bourbon, that has a specific definition. It means that it is a bourbon distilled by a single distiller from grains grown in a single season at a single distillery and aged for at least 4 years to be bottled at 100 proof, 50% alcohol. That's what makes a bonded bourbon. And in fact, the bonded bourbon, it derives from the 1897 Bottled in Bond Act, which, for lack of a better distinction, is the first consumer protection law this country ever promulgated. You know, it's kind of crazy the extent to which whiskey has impacted our legal regimen, right? I mean, our first tax was a whiskey tax. Our first consumer protection law related to bonded whiskey. And then there was that whole thing with prohibition, which I'll let your History Channel buff father detail to you when next you're at family dinner. But for the occasion of this commercial, let's indulge. It's award-winning. Literally, the Beverage Testing Institute gave us the highest marks possible for this bonded bourbon. We beat out Eagle Rare. We beat out Blanton's single batch, Four Roses single barrel. I don't mean to brag, but I explicitly mean to brag. 100 proof. This is going to make up for all the traumas you've ever experienced, whether they were on the battlefield or at the 9th grade homecoming when Jennifer wouldn't dance with you, slow dance. If that reveals too much trauma, don't worry, because there's Helderberg bonded bourbon in your New Scotland Spirits branded Glencairn. Heaven on the nose. Ecstasy on the tongue. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure sharing with you my New Scotland Spirits, the Helderberg whiskey line, our 68 whiskey. Stay tuned for the gin that we'll be releasing later this year. Every element of this company is designed to celebrate the community that produced it. We struck our fortune in the place where we grew up, from kindergarten to 12th grade. And if I may be so bold as to offer some life advice, let me dispense the following. Home is where the heart is, and it's where your success lies. At a time where a lot of the world that we know is changing all around us, the one thing you will always be able to count on are the people and the places that made you who you are. Things get crazy, circle the wagons, hunker down, return home. And there you'll find your cause, your reason for being, and the start of your next adventure. I'll see you at the New Scotland Spirits Tasting Room.